HomeSports, bringing home the best of sports.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the maiden voyage of HomeSports Legacy Hour. I'm Cameron Stewart, and with me is Brandon Doman, local businessman here from Provo, Utah, who's, I think, played some rec league football in his day. Brandon, say hello to all of our listeners. They both want to hear from you.
We've had some good rec league days. I remember a time, 1994, I threw a Ram 90 jet. It was a fade into the end zone. I could not have thrown a better ball. Corner of the end zone.
Against the arch rival Olympus, right?
You let that thing fall right through the fingers.
How
right
in the
through your
world
fingers onto
you
the
can
ground.
overthrow someone that's wide open in the end zone is beyond me. So for those of you that may not know Brandon, obviously many of you are familiar with myself, Cameron Stewart, and some of my days as the men's basketball team manager in 2000. That's right, I have a conference championship ring.
I know you do.
It says Stewart, MGR.
I know you do.
Manager.
Yep.
Proud of that.
Yep.
And
So you're on.
So
you're
yeah,
on the
we
radio.
both,
What's your background? What's your radio background?
Well, my radio
what
background
qualifies you for this.
Well, I know Brandon, and Brandon feels bad sometimes, and he wants to throw random people on the air. But I actually, I could rattle off a resume. I've done racetrack announcing. I've done radio work.
You got a great radio voice.
Well, thanks, Brandon. That's something I try to work on. And then I've also been doing comedy improv for about 10 years.
Didn't you do
I'm
radio
really
back
funny.
in
I'm really funny.
Snow College days?
Yeah, Snow College, where I actually played football. I was a football player down there, so you and I, again, just similar things. We both have championship rings. We both played football at a high level at Snow College and the 49ers, so very similar. Yeah, this is good.
Well,
So
let's tell
we can talk shop finally.
Let's tell them what we're doing.
So you're going to be expecting a podcast once a week that may or may not change your life, and it may or may not bring you to tears. I think there'll be some laughter. There'll be some emotions that are going to run high. And we're going to address all of the pressing issues, of course, BYU, Utah State, other things in the college football world. Brandon knows a ton about lacrosse, and I'm sure he's anxious to talk about that, so we'll do that. But more than anything, so Brandon and I have known each other since we were literally 12 years old, 15 years old, something like that.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Since I was really popular, and he was just kind of this awkward kid in junior high, and put my arm around him and took him under my wing.
Cameron used to wear colorful tie-dye parachute pants to school, and
They were muscle pants.
I wasn't quite sure if I should approach him in the hallway, or I wasn't quite sure what to do with him, but we eventually we got through the parachute pant episode, and he picked me up from after school and gave me a ride home.
In the family van.
Ever since I ride home.
So we've been essentially doing these podcasts for about 20 years, and this is the first one we've actually recorded. So welcome aboard, everybody.
Well, I'll add to that as we kind of introduce the show and look forward to doing it over and over again. We've had a lot of interest in regards to home sports, what we're doing as it relates to leaving a legacy, a bunch of the content, messaging, interviews, stories that we've been telling about all of our local coaches and local athletes and celebrities, and the importance of empowering dads with the needed tools to leave a legacy at home through sports. And we figured after being in an association on the radio and listening to some of these audios that have gone out, we figured that it would be a great opportunity to present a lot of that while we talk about football and all that's going on during the week and analyze that, bring on great guests onto the show. And what I would say about Cameron is that we thought about a lot of different people to host this show. And we couldn't think of anybody else. So we're glad that Home Sports can be represented by Cameron Stewart.
So obviously, Brandon, since you left coaching last spring, you rather than taking other coaching opportunities, you decided to play businessman with your brothers and do Home Sports. Just give the listeners really quick kind of an idea of why not coaching, and the question that everybody asks me all the time, because I'll actually answer it because you play the politically correct game too much.
Go ahead.
Is he going to coach again? Obviously, I think you have a lot of people that think you're a fantastic coach, and so give me a little your thoughts on why you decided to do the home sports gig.
Yeah, when BYU let me go, I had to make a decision if I was going to now pack up my family and move them off to a far distant land to coach football. And I love football. I love coaching. I don't know that I necessarily am in love with the profession. all of the other things that go into it from an administrative perspective, the time requirements, especially outside of BYU, and what that was going to mean to me as a husband and a father in my home, seemed quite daunting at the time. And I'll never forget it. I came home one day. I don't know that I'd been home at 5 o'clock ever, at least in the last 8 years. And I got home, it was 5 o'clock.
I thought there had been a break-in.
My wife's like, who's that male figure walking around the house? But I came home, and there was my 8-year-old kid, Jace. And I've told this story several times now, but the snow had just melted. It was March, and he was holding a baseball mitt, and he handed me a mitt. He had a baseball, and he said, "Dad, let's go out and play catch." And I don't want to miss those moments. And the opportunity to now be able to coach my little boys' Little League football team and their Little League basketball team and associate.
You were the D-line coach, right?
I was the.
That's good. They gave you a lot of.
No. Defensive tackles. I was
defensive, just the inside
just
guys.
the interior,
sure. Yeah, no, the
interior
DNs, that's a
portion of the
different
D-line.
skill set.
And we were good. You should have seen our little third grade defensive tackles. We learned the bear crawl, the crab crawl, the turn sideways.
I'm glad they're easing you into it.
Yeah.
You know.
So we've had a ton of fun. It's I don't think that starting a new business is for the timid of heart. But when my brothers approached me and said, "If you're not going to coach, why don't you come into business with us? We own the URL, HomeSports. We have that trademark. Why don't we go build a business?" We've thought a lot about what that means to us, what HomeSports means to us. We've talked a lot about leaving a legacy at home through sports, and both of us have dads that have been involved in our lives. And I look back at my father and the legacy that he left with us, and he utilized sports as a vehicle to teach us a lot of principles that were strikingly displayed in sports, especially in difficult, critical times of our life. I think we learned a lot of great things through sport, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this. It's provided a platform to talk about something I'm extremely passionate about, and I know you are. And Cameron, for our listeners, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself? I know you have some children. You have a boy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so unlike you, I don't have 13 kids that are 4 years apart, which is great.
Okay.
You would make your wife do that.
Okay, great.
And then disappear.
13 minus, no, go ahead.
No, so I've got 4 kids, 1 boy, and then 3 girls. Lots of girls. So
You're good at girls.
I'm really good. I've always been good. You know that, though. If it wasn't for me, you probably wouldn't have even gone to junior prom.
Okay.
But right. So no, I've always loved the home sports idea. So I think it's easy to get behind and excited about. And yeah, so my boy's our oldest, he's 10, and then I got 3 girls that trickle in after that. And
I saw you a few times. I walked past you on my way to my Little League football game.
Yeah.
I saw you standing tall with your arms folded,
I was
watching
right there.
Tyson play Little League football. What was that like for you?
It was a lesson in physics. And when you're a lineman and you're 70 pounds under the X weight and the other guys are 40 pounds over the X weight, it's hard to watch your son try hard and just get moved backwards a lot. Bless his heart. It was tough. He fought, though. He was a fighter. He just needs more meat.
Like you.
I'm really big now, but I used to be really skinny. You and I both have really big legs, though. Big calf muscles. That was good.
Well, it's this is gonna be a lot of fun, and we're glad that you're willing to join us on this show and host and
That's good. If it was up to me, we'd just do this sentimental stuff the whole show. I mean, and avoid sports. I mean, at some point, I'd love to.
Well, let's get into
sing.
sports.
Let's sing a song.
No, let's talk about sports. Take us. Lead us.
All right. So everyone's obviously pretty excited for this Saturday. I think you've got 2 giant games. Both BYU and Utah games are critical. It's been talked about a lot. Let's start with BYU and Wisconsin coming up. I mean, obviously, Wisconsin is what I believe is one of the most underrated teams in the country. And, I mean, they're ranked 22, 23, and they're essentially 7-1 if we're not counting absolute disasters from referees. So, obviously, a lot of BYU fans are feeling like BYU matches up really well with Wisconsin. I mean, granted, they have a great front 7. They have a fantastic offensive line, but I think we would much rather face that if you're a BYU fan than a bunch of speed from every direction. And so what's your take in terms of, is it a good matchup? Do you believe there's such things as a good matchup? And is it personnel that makes you match up, or is it scheme that makes you match up well?
Well, I think there's a few challenges this week. Number one, Wisconsin is number one in the nation in red zone scoring efficiency, meaning that at a rate of like 39% of the time the team that's going into the red zone scores a touchdown. They're far and beyond the number one team in that area. So BYU has to get points, whether it's touchdowns or field goals when they get into that red zone area to score. I didn't realize until today that they were the best in the country at that. They're number 6 in the country in third down efficiency. So BYU has struggled this year, Cameron, in third down efficiency. They've struggled in red zone efficiency. And if they can't stay on schedule first and second down, and Taysom Hill and that run attack and simple early successes in the pass game, if they can't duplicate that, when I say duplicate, what they've done over the last 4 weeks, duplicate their early first and second down stuff, they're going to be in trouble because this Wisconsin defense is that good, and they're playing against Ohio State, Arizona State, then they go play Iowa. They beat them 28-9 or whatever it was, and I think they're very, very, very good on defense. On the flip side, though, Cameron, their quarterback I think is an average player.
Agreed.
They just happen to have 2,000-yard rushers, but I think that plays into the hands of BYU because BYU does. I shouldn't say it plays into their hands. It just plays into the strengths of BYU's defense because they are a run-stop first defense and they're really good at it. And I think BYU can not stop, but at least have some success in halting their success on movement situations.
Giant wild card.
Yep.
Aberderis goes out in the third quarter last week. He's their number one receiver, and it's not even close. He's got a little over 800 yards receiving this year.
Okay.
Then the second leading receiver for Wisconsin is their tight end with a little over 200 yards. And then you get into some random guy that's caught a handful of passes for 100 yards who's their second receiver.
Right.
So if he's hurt and he's not going to play, the conventional fan just goes, well, it's simple. Just throw a little 13 guys in the box and just force them to throw. They got no receivers. Is it that easy? I mean, you hear that all the time. Just throw 8 guys in the box, 9 guys in the box, and voila, magic victory, right?
So last year against Oregon State, right, early in the year, they had a really good running back.
Mm-hmm.
They were big up front, and they were getting after us in the run game. And so Coach Mendenhall came up. He had no choice. He had to bring the safeties up and do everything he could to stop the run. As soon as that happened, the receivers on the edge were so good, and they started attacking in the air. And they threw for 1,000,000 yards, and so Bronco was constantly playing chess, but he was playing from behind. And so he was trying to figure out, how do I stop the run? Oh, shoot, how do I stop the pass? I don't think Wisconsin's pass game is good enough, with or without their receiver, to consistently go out there and throw the ball on the edge. They're going to be better than BYU's corners, I think down in and down out, but I don't know that their quarterback can consistently get the ball to the edge enough that the pass game is going to beat BYU. If it does, if they throw the ball up on the edges and their receivers are beating our corners, then it's going to be a really long Saturday for BYU, but I just don't see that happening.
So let me ask the question that 30 to 35% of all fans ask themselves or the guy next to him in every home game.
Where do you fit in? Are you one of those 30, 35?
Yes. Okay. I'm in the 5% that asks it more frequently.
Okay, go ahead.
Why in the world? So I see this game where there's going to be a lot of 3rd and 3s, a lot of 3rd and 5s.
Yeah.
Right? BYU stops the run well. They're going to run it a lot on 1st and 2nd and down, and then their quarterback's going to have to make a bunch of plays on 3rd down. But I think they're going to be likely 3rd and shorts. BYU is notorious for giving a 36-yard cushion, with their corners and their receivers. And it seems like the University of Utah is the only team that consistently runs 7-yard curls because they recognize it's an absolute free play.
Right.
Why in the world don't other teams run that play every other play? Because it seems to the fans, it is a free 7 yards over and over whenever they want it. So for these 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 6s that they will have Saturday, why not just do that?
BYU's played one team this year that's had confidence in throwing the ball, and it's been Houston, and they had a freshman quarterback, and he was okay. But, man, they had a ton of confidence to throw it around. Most of the teams don't have confidence to raise up, throw the football. They would rather snap it, direct snap to quarterback, hand off the ball to their 1,000-yard rusher, and depend on, especially Wisconsin, they're going to rely on those big physical offensive linemen to get the 2 yards that they're going to need to get. And there's just too much out there for these teams. It's unfortunate that we don't see teams do that. I think you're right because it is a gimme, but But BYU just hasn't faced anybody that's confident in the pass game.
And the reason I bring that up is because Gary Anderson, the one team that does it consistently is Utah.
Right.
I mean, they abuse BYU on a lot of 3rd and 6s, 3rd and 7s with 10-yard, 9-yard curls.
Right.
Gary Anderson's been there. He knows and understands that that's going to be there. And I'd be surprised if they didn't try to take advantage of that, especially with a senior quarterback that they have a lot of confidence in. I mean, I don't think he's great. I think he's average, but I think they trust him enough to make at least a good throw on a 7-yard curl.
I think that's the only way you challenge BYU's defense, is you got to challenge their corners. They're praying that you don't challenge their corners.
Yeah.
And right now they've only been challenged in one game, and it was the Houston game. Utah should have challenged them. They didn't. They played conservatively in that game. They only did one double move, slant go, a sluggo route, and they threw it down to Drez Anderson. And he took it for 70 yards. But I just haven't seen too many teams do it.
All right, the special guest, Brandon, you're a man of many powers and many people. So word on the street is you drummed up somebody pretty special for us.
Okay, so trivia question.
Ready. Bring it.
1984.
Okay.
BYU national championship year. Captain, All-American, defensive end from Wisconsin.
Yeah, 1984.
Who is that?
I can only think of one person that fits that bill. Sweet Jim.
Jim Herrmann.
Jim Herrmann.
Let's get him on the phone.
All right, we've got a special guest from our earlier trivia question. The 1984 captain of the BYU football team, a man whose roots come from the great state of Wisconsin, and a man who has great passion for cheese as a result. Jim Herrmann. Jim, how are you?
I am well. How are you guys?
Good. Is it true that you still hold the BYU bench press record?
Negative. I'm hoping I still hold the sack record, though. I'm hoping I still got the
we know you.
Sack record. I don't have the bench press record.
We know you know what that number is. What is it? The sack record.
It's really weird. I had 17 my junior year, and I had 12 my senior year. So that's 29 if I do my math correctly. But they didn't count anything I got my sophomore, my freshman year. So I think the number's around 31, 32, something like that. So
wow.
I think I still have the lead, but who knows?
I will guarantee there is a minimum of 2 to 3 quarterbacks that wept at night as a result of your actions. So I hope you feel good about that.
Let's hope. That was the goal anyhow. You bet.
So Jim, we're talking a little bit about BYU versus Wisconsin, and one of the things we want to ask you. We know that you grew up out there. Neither Cameron or I have been out there. Tell us about it. Tell us about Wisconsin, Camp Randall, what it means to those fans out there, being from Wisconsin, what it means to be a Badger from your perspective.
You got it. Yeah, it's hey, it's my home state, so I'm obviously biased, but Wisconsin is a special place, and I think it takes not much more to look at really what goes on at Lambeau Field. It literally is. It would be like having a professional football team in Preston, Idaho. It's 3 hours from the biggest city. It's literally in a small town under 100,000 people. And it's, as you all know, it's been sold out. It's got a waiting list of 22 years. Matter of fact, I was just up there. I went to the Monday night game with my fellow classmate Steve Young, who now works for ESPN. So I kind of
lawyer. Steve Young. Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's him, and it's kind of fun. I get to coattail around with him still, and get to enjoy some of these great experiences. So I was up at Lambeau on the field for the game, and just had a great time. But being home, just it definitely reminds me of this unique place. I think as far as Camp Randall goes, one thing I think that would interest BYU fans is I believe ESPN, USA Today, and Sports Illustrated all have ranked it the #1 college game day experience, at least in polls that they've published in the last year or two. So it is a unique place, and it's something that you really have to experience. I would be remiss to say that some of it is alcohol fueled. Obviously, Wisconsin is a large beer consumption state, so that adds to some of it. But there are also just really good people that enjoy a community, and there's kind of that community feel to it. So it's kind of a really weird mix, but it's unbelievable. It's 90,000 people that get there, really the night before the game, and you have to really experience the the whole town. It's not really just around the stadium. The band, and as crazy as that sounds, college bands aren't as big out west, but back in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Ohio State, they're really a big part of it. And the band and the cheerleaders and the dance squad, they kind of make their way down State Street. They go in and out of restaurants, and they play, and they make their way all the way to the stadium, and then they actually have this, they call it the band run-on, which it sounds crazy, but you have to see it, and it just adds to the whole pageantry and atmosphere of what makes college football so great. And it is a fun place, and then they jump around at the third quarter. They have actually what's called the fifth quarter, where everyone stays after the game. The band comes back out, and after a big win, a lot of the players do, and they have kind of a set of songs they play at. The kind of final one is really after the Budweiser song. It used to say, when you say Budweiser, you've said it all. And they changed the name to Wisconsin. So it's when you say Wisconsin, you've said it all. And they come out and they do the polka and the whole thing. It's just it's hard for me to put into words. You kind of have to be there to experience. But it's really what makes college football great.
So let me ask you, did you grow up a Badger? Were you a big fan?
I did grow up a Badger. I did. I grew up in a town called Heartland. Right in the heartland. Nice. It was a great place. I didn't know it at the time. I guess that's the beauty about being young is being naive. But I went to an amazing high school. My high school, I think Sports Illustrated went by and ranked the #1 athletic program in each state. My high school was the #1 athletic program in my state, and then I think they ranked the top 10 athletic programs in the country, and I think Arrowhead made it. It is truly a dominant athletic program, and not just football. It's football, baseball, basketball, track, cross country. We actually had our own indoor hockey arena. We have a 153-acre campus. We have our own lighted football stadium, our own lighted soccer stadium that are separate, and we have, like I said, we have our own indoor hockey arena, and it was just a great high school. And
Sounds like Skyline High School up in Salt Lake.
That's it, baby. That's it. Back in the day, it's actually, I think Arrowhead has a record. They've been to the state final game like 28 times or 29 times. So
wow.
It's a big deal. Yeah, they're really good, and I was actually the first D1 guy to come out of my high school, which is interesting. But since then, gosh, they've had a litany of them. My brother went to Michigan. He followed me 5 years later, he went to the University of Michigan, and then there's a lot of Badgers that come out of my high school. There's been Wolverines and Buckeyes and
so
Irish.
On that note, I think I have two questions. Cameron may have one for you, and maybe briefly tell us, because I think it'd be good for our listeners to hear this. You grew up out there, not much background of BYU. Why'd you choose BYU?
Oh, it's a crazy story, and I will try to make it brief, but it was just, it was different back then. As you know, Brandon, being your experience as a college coach and recruiting, it's just gotten so insane year after year after year. Luckily, I was blessed with, quite frankly, parents that didn't care, and I mean that in the best possible way. My mom is an educator, she's a teacher, and my dad grew up a farmer and worked hard and provided well for our family, but it wasn't all about really the college scholarship. It was really just about participating and finding a school to go get an education at. So it was pretty low key from my standpoint, from my family standpoint, and I was recruited by Northwestern, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Those were really the schools that recruited me. I had a kind of a weird connection to BYU. We took a family trip around the West with my grandfather, who I'll tell you a little bit about the connection there later, but we went to Yellowstone and Yosemite and all the parks in Utah. We stopped in Provo, Utah when I was probably 12 years old, and my grandfather got me out of the car and walked me into this place that I knew nothing about, introduced me to Glenn Tuckett, told him that I was going to be this great athlete, and they gave me this little card to fill out. I took home and filled it out when I was 12 years. I was in 7th grade or 8th grade.
Wow.
And then Coach French, who was recruiting, I was getting recruited by the University of Minnesota, he was hired at BYU my senior year in high school.
Right.
And he was recruiting me as a junior. And so he knew of me, And so it was kind of a combination of those things. And believe it or not, my grandfather, unbeknownst to me, when I was growing up, I went to BYU as a Catholic kid, was LDS. He grew up LDS in Salt Lake. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. He was a 4-year All-American there, and he actually then went to Wharton, graduated first in his class at Wharton, ended up actually teaching economics at the Wharton School of Business, and then became president of General Electric Medical and X-ray Division, which is in Wisconsin. And he was not active. My grandmother was not a member. And I didn't really know my grandfather was a member until I went to BYU and kind of put it all together. So, yeah, it's kind of, I get a weird connection and history to the whole thing. But
well, we're go ahead.
Northwestern offered me. They were the losingest program in college football at the time. Minnesota offered me, and they were right above Northwestern. And Wisconsin kind of played some games with me. They offered me and pressured me to accept, and I didn't. I wanted to go on the rest of my trips and then threatened to pull my scholarship, and then did and then didn't, and it kind of went back and forth. And really the day of signing, I showed up at school, and Coach French was sitting in our library, and I walked through the library on my way to my locker. It was probably 7:45 in the morning, and he just looked at me and said, "Hey, let's do this thing." And I said, "Yeah, you okay? What the heck?" And sat down at this table in my library and signed this scholarship, and he left. Dave McClain, who was the head coach of Wisconsin, came by the school about 4 o'clock, and I said, "Hey, this guy was here from BYU this morning," and I ended up. So it was a crazy experience.
Well, we're glad. I've gotten to know you over the years, and your kids and your family, and we're glad you came.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I came. It's I can't tell you the impact it's had on my life.
Good.
Really, just from a football standpoint, I redshirted a year, but my 4 years of actively playing, I believe we were 43-3.
Yep.
And so I think we lost one game my freshman year, one my sophomore, one my junior, and we were undefeated as my senior year. My redshirt year, I think we lost 3 games that year. That was Steve's first year. We lost to Georgia and I think Air Force and one other team. And so I was blessed that way. I was lucky enough to be elected captain of the 1984 National Championship team, something I'm really proud of. And it was a great experience. And I was drafted into the NFL and dinked around and went from Dallas to the Bengals and made the actual team at the Bengals, and everything's going great. First game, my second year there, blew my knee out. Went through that whole thing, but just to have the experience was amazing. And my 2 best friends are Steve Young and Lee Johnson. We were kind of the 3 amigos at BYU, and Steve, obviously, most people know his career is in the Hall of Fame and played 17 years. And my other buddy, Lee Johnson, a lot of people don't know, played 19 years in the NFL, and for a while had more punts than anyone in the history of the NFL. So
one of the last barefoot punters left.
Yes,
there was barefoot.
He was Mr. Barefoot and Mr. Thunderfoot, and really when we look at it, we were kind of inseparable. We all came from different places. Steve came from Connecticut, even though he had some Utah roots. Lee came from Houston. I came from Wisconsin, and we showed up. We were all homesick, and we all were just holding on for dear life, and we all became really good friends. And they really kind of got me through my homesickness and my introduction into a unique culture and a place that I didn't know much about. And they were just, they became my family. And ironically, we kind of beat the odds. We all got drafted. We all played professional football, and we all still remain very, very close friends today to this day. So it was an awesome deal.
Well, we're glad that we've had you on the show. I think that we may conclude here, unless Cameron wants to ask you something at the end. But tell us what you'd say to the BYU football team after everything you just said to us. Your experience, they're going into Wisconsin. Your experience at BYU, all the big games you've played in. What would you say to this football team as they enter into Wisconsin?
One thing that one other just kind of interesting tidbit. My freshman year in 1980, we had a cancellation. We had an open by a week. And, I guess Tom or someone could explain it further, but we were picked up kind of at the last minute to play the Badgers. We played the University of Wisconsin my freshman year. It was the 3rd game of the year. and I was lucky enough to travel and suit up, and unfortunately didn't get into the game. But we went back in a great environment. I think to this day I've heard Lavelle a couple times on radio shows been asked what's the greatest place he's ever played, or the most fun, unique college atmosphere. He always says Wisconsin, and it was great to go back with BYU then and beat them 28-3. I think was the score. And I think one thing, if any BYU fans can get out there, they're going to have an awesome experience. I think we're poised. I think we're in the right place. I think we're peaking. We're getting better, and I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I'm certainly not going to be shocked in any way, shape, or form if we come out of there with a victory. I wouldn't see that as a major upset. I would see that as a really well fought, well played game, and I think it's a game that BYU can win.
So I think it's fair to say our listeners can take it to the bank that you've essentially guaranteed a win. That's helpful. I think.
You know what? I think that's
Jim Herrmann, you heard it here first. So.
Thank you for summarizing. I'm with you right there, man. That's a good summary. Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. I really am. I think Gary's a great coach. Obviously, they got some great talent, and it's it's going to be a tough game, but I just feel like it's where we match up fairly well against them, and I hope we don't play tough, don't turn the ball over, keep mistakes to a minimum, and if we do that, we're going to be in that game.
Well, fantastic sporting events aside, I'd just love to see the band polka dance, and that seems probably enough motivation for me.
I know it sounds crazy, Cameron, but it is. If you got a chance to go back, it's as dumb as it sounds. The band and the whole atmosphere is it's really fun. It's enjoyable. It's something to be part of. But it's a good time, no doubt.
Yeah, it's on the bucket list for sure. So.
Well, thank you, Jim. Have a great night. We appreciate you being on the show with us, and we'll conclude this segment of our show with a shout out for Jim Herrmann.
Thanks for taking the time, Jim.
Take care, Jim.
I appreciate you calling. Thank you.
You bet. Gary Anderson is a player's coach. His players love him. He relates to them. He doesn't overdo friendship with them, but they certainly they feel very loyal to him and the way that he treats them. I think they enjoy being around him. In fact, there's a video clip of him dressing up as a Wisconsin player on Halloween and coming out and being with the guys.
Holy shit, stretch, let's go!
That's pretty funny. I would have enjoyed playing for that guy. One of the things that Jim Herrmann talked about was the Wisconsin tradition and the stadium and the fans and this jump around that they have. Man, it looks like a ton of fun. It's become a pretty strong tradition all across the country, but knowing that it originated there in Wisconsin, I think it would be enjoyable for all BYU fans this Saturday.
It was 1998. We played against Purdue University. To be there for that first one, to see the magnitude of the game, the reaction of the crowd, and being there and being on the field and seeing it, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
It's one of the most amazing experiences you'll ever be a part of.
There's nothing better in the entire world. It's so intense that once you get involved and once the first, I think Badger football, I think winning, I think game day, I think being in that stadium.
I guess you could say it's like a culture, you know what I mean? Like, we only have it, other people copy it, but there's only one jump around, and that's here in Wisconsin.
Just goosebumps.
Absolutely wild.
You just know it's coming.
There's nothing like it. Once it starts happening, you can feel it.
You're just jumping as high as you can, as much as you can.
Everyone just gets a whole new energy and a whole new momentum.
We get to look up into all of our students we're having a blast, and we get to have a blast right by the players too.
You could be anywhere in the city and you can kind of feel the ground shake a little bit.
When you see Camp Randall just going up and down, jumping around, it's the most beautiful sight in the world, because jump around is really what Wisconsin is all about.
Jump around just continues to grow and be one of the great football traditions.
Jump around is the greatest college game day tradition.
It's something special because you know it's happened before us and it's going to happen after us. We're just part of it.
Jump around is one of the coolest traditions of any college sports town.
The best college game day tradition is jump around here at Wisconsin.
For sure.
So we've talked a little bit about leaving a legacy for home sports. How do you define legacy?
No, that's good. It's a good question.
Thank you.
So as we've kind of created what we think are the characteristics of sport that we should learn or that we should gain, we've talked about L for legacy, love of the game. Fathers, love what your boy loves, love what your daughter loves. Don't make them do what you love. Love what they love. E in vision, setting goals and setting your sights on things and conceiving in your mind things that you truly want to go accomplish and have great vision. G for grit. You get knocked down, how fast do you get up? Toughness and durability and learning how to really overcome adversity. A, accountability. Being accountable to one another. You're a teammate. You got to be there on time. Do you show up on time? Are you the first guy in line or you the last guy in line? Being accountable to one another. C, coachability. Are you humble? Is it all about you? Is there truth in your purpose? Is there willpower in your character? Do people trust you? Are you a coachable guy? And then the culminating portion of legacies is Y, yoke. Yoke meaning that a father's son or a teammate or family members should yoke themselves to one another. The leading principle there is there's usually one that's older, that's more mature, that's wiser, that's stronger, and has to lead that younger individual. And a father and a son yoked together, and that father leading that boy. And at some point, that boy's going to start yoking that dad and bringing that dad along. But the principle of the father and the son being yoked together and using the principles of sports to bring them together in a bonding way, and then that father can teach that boy all the principles. We think that sports is that worldwide religion and that opportunity to leave a legacy, particularly in the home through sports.
Outstanding. In fact, I heard we have some video snippets of Kyle Whittingham and then Bronco Mendenhall talking about this yoke idea that you illustrated. Why don't we show the viewers?
Brought to you by Protection One, featuring Coach Kyle Whittingham and his brothers talking about their dad, the great Coach Fred Whittingham.
The toughest person I've ever come across physically and mentally.
He was intimidating to the other players around him.
He definitely had the exterior rough side that people saw.
One of the funniest stories when Kyle and my dad were throwing a football around. My dad threw the football to Kyle, he missed it, it landed in some dog doo-doo. And Kyle picked it up and threw it right back to him. He caught it and was like looking at his hands. At that point, Kyle just took off.
When I think about what I miss the most, it's the just hanging out. Every once in a while I'd say, I gotta leave you alone, I ought to go home, I just don't know what I'd do.
I greatly miss him.
Home Sports, bringing home the best of sports. Another Home Sports Legacy Minute, featuring Coach Bronco Mendenhall.
I love the example of a yoke, and having grown up here, even though we don't use yokes any longer, at least we didn't, a yoke is pretty simple. It bonds two beings together that are united in purpose or direction. Those beings a lot of times aren't equal. You can yoke a larger animal to a smaller one and still get a pretty similar result. One is just taking more of the load. I think that's what my dad did growing up. He allowed me to feel part of it. I was in the harness with him, but the reality was I was just kind of getting dragged along, and he was setting the example. But what was clear is I wanted to go where he was going. And that part from a yoke is really important. So I was young and not capable yet of pulling my load, but I wanted to be in the same harness and I wanted to go the same direction.
All right, again, HomeSports Legacy Hour. Brandon Doman and Cameron Stewart here, talking a little BYU football with Wisconsin coming up, and we're going to touch on the Utes here and the Aggies for a few minutes. Last comment on BYU Wisconsin before we move on. Obviously, Gary Anderson, Bronco Mendenhall, that's been well documented this week. They've got a great relationship. He knows BYU well. What kind of advantage does that give somebody like Gary? Does it ever work to be a disadvantage where he maybe overthinks it and overcoaches because he feels like he knows him so well?
Well, I don't think Gary has played against BYU with the caliber of team that he's got now. So he's coached at a lot of different places. Now here he is at Wisconsin, where he's got a front seven, a linebacker that's a heck of a player. I think he's dealing with just a higher caliber athlete overall at Wisconsin, and so he shouldn't overcoach. He should go in there and play defense the way that he knows how to play defense, put the pressure packages in the way that he puts them in, and play against BYU the way he knows how to play against BYU. He does a great job in critical situations to try and confuse the quarterback, third and shorts, third and mediums, and then he does some great stuff in the red zone. He just needs to stay consistent with that and try and get Taysom Hill to force it and turn the football over in this game. And if he can do that, that's the Gary Anderson that I know, and I'd suspect that he'll stay the course.
Okay. So let's talk Utah and Arizona State coming up. And the most famous hand in the history of Utah football, apparently.
Man. Yep.
As I see this developing, this just reeks of deja vu of last year with Riley Nelson and BYU. You got a guy who's gutting it out. He's trying to be the tough guy, trying to be the leader. And at some point, is it just better off just to play someone that's 100% rather than posturing that this guy's 100%, he's going to be fine, and then you see him, against USC, and you can tell he's not even close to 100%.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that the coaches are going to have to ask themselves, do they have a quarterback behind this guy? Regardless of how this guy is, let me rephrase that. He's injured. Let's take him and let's measure the guy where he is today. Is there somebody better than where he's at? And if they feel confident that their backup or their third string guy can play better than a hurt starting quarterback, then play the next guy.
So let's assume he's 100%. I'm a fan of Travis Wilson. I think he's got tons of tools. He's athletic. I think he's a tough guy. He's a good leader. I think the team genuinely respects him. It was the game against UCLA where he throws 6 picks.
Right.
And a lot of people gave him an out and said they were tip balls and they were just, bad luck.
Right.
From my vantage point, a lot of those were tip balls because he was forcing the ball into some pretty tight spaces.
Yeah.
Meaning he's still making a lot of sophomore mistakes. And I think some of it's injury, but I also wonder some of it is confidence and he's kind of shown a track record all year of just forcing balls in there. Now, some he gets in, and which is great, but a lot of the times he's forcing it in some pretty tight spots, and I think that's a tendency that gets compounded when he's hurt.
So remember, everybody needs to remember that Travis Wilson didn't redshirt, played a few games as a freshman, and is now a sophomore. Taysom Hill didn't redshirt, played a few games, sophomore year. If we all pretend like they were going to come out in those first 5 games and be great, we're crazy. They just haven't played enough football games, and they're playing against quality opponents. I saw Travis Wilson, in my opinion, improve every week. He started making strides. There's no way a smart football coach, with the progress that he's making and the team actually showing potential to go and beat the tar out of that guy, it wouldn't have made any sense. And the fans at Utah were, I think were hopeful. Hey, Travis Wilson, I think this guy's got a chance.
Played great against Utah State out of the gate. So and then you have a Stanford win that everyone hangs their hat on.
Yeah,
sure.
BYU was down on Taysom, right? They're like, hey, let's put the next guy in, but Utah fans weren't feeling that way, and so. Now take a guy that was starting to build confidence, wasn't confident, but was building confidence, and then you compound it with an injury. By the way, it's his throwing hand. And you watch him in that USC game, he missed every throw. So when you're throwing a football with an injury, and you're thinking about the injury rather than throwing the ball, go back to Riley Nelson. I'm throwing the football, and all I'm thinking about is my back, and if I go too far, it's going to hurt, and it's going to tweak, and now I can't play the football the way that really the only way I know how to play it effectively. And Travis Wilson, same thing. All of a sudden, I don't have the confidence. I can't. My mental capacity's weakened, and I think that you're looking at a guy now that has lost some self-confidence. So they ought to look at, when I say that, you got to measure where Travis Wilson is today, and those coaches have to calculate it well. And then, do we want to bench the guy forever? Then make that decision. Is our team better off with this next guy off the bench? And I think we've seen a lot of that backup. I don't know if they're better off with the backup.
So Utah's defense has played really well this year.
Yeah.
And despite a lot of turnovers, a lot of interceptions, and they've been put into a lot of tough spaces.
Yeah.
Over and over. At some point that takes a toll.
Yep.
And a defense can begin to resent an offense.
Right.
Or vice versa. How do you ensure that does not happen? Because I could see grumblings.
Right.
In a game like USC where you're going, flip, we've given up virtually no points where they've driven the length of the field. I mean, we gave them 19, but they have a bunch of field goals and turnovers and short fields. And at what point does the defense start to resent the offense and it just really can, go sideways in a hurry? Well, I think they're close. I think they're a game or two away from that.
They are. They may be a game away from that breaking point, and it's all up to the head coach. His demeanor, his consistency. If he starts ebbing and flowing, the team will ebb and flow. If he shows any type, or he starts giving some grumblings, or he starts saying stuff to his defensive staff in the room, and he starts saying, "Man, what the heck is going on in our offensive staff room?" or "Hey, what the heck's going on over there on offense?" That's going to matriculate all the way down through the defensive players, and there will be a divide, and the players will take sides, and the offense will lose. And he's a defensive head coach. The offense will lose, and so will the team.
So are you just dependent on a guy like Trevor Riley, who's a great leader and a great football player, to ensure that defense does not start to resent the offense like that? Is he the guy that steps up and just goes, hey, we do our job, they'll come around?
Well, Kyle Whittingham, I think Lavelle Edwards was the best at this, and I think Kyle's showing some attributes that way. Stay consistent. Show up on Monday morning and be the same guy. And those players will follow you, and then you're dead right. Those seniors better rise to the occasion. Trevor Riley and those seniors better rise to the occasion, and if they have any chance against Arizona State, who, by the way, is playing.
You just touched my thigh. That was really nice. That was really I dialed in right there. That was good.
Did you focus when I did that?
No, when you did that, I'm like, something really important's about to happen.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
You ready for what's important?
Go, yeah.
Wow.
Hold on, let me get composed.
All right.
That was great. Go.
We're going to go to break.
Another HomeSports Legacy Minute, brought to you by Protection One, featuring Coach Bronco Mendenhall and his dad, Paul.
I can whistle from the top of that stadium at a game, and you'll hear it on the field.
His whistle is really distinctive. In the middle of a game, even with at Oregon State, I swear I could pick out his whistle if I'd made a play, but that whistle was like approval. The rest of the crowd could have been booing, and if I heard that whistle, it was like, man, I did something good, and it was reassuring. My dad has tried really hard to, in his own way, growing up, to make sure I knew he loved me. And yeah, whistle to some might mean come. A whistle to me meant he loved me and he was pulling for me.
HomeSports, bringing home the best of sports.
All right, and the touch of the thigh is the perfect segue for what do you see happening? What are the keys to the game? And please don't make them really obvious, like they have to execute and play good defense and play good offense.
Well, I'm worried about University of Utah's football team. You asked all the right questions.
Thank you.
And I just don't know. I just don't know if they have it in them to rebound, especially this week against a team that's got caught on fire. And so I'm worried that Utah's. My prediction. I know Utah fans are not going to like this, but I think they lose potentially by 2 touchdowns.
The caught on fire Sun Devils. That was well played, by the way.
Caught on fire by the Devils.
The raising fork. Although Utah's really good at home, and Kyle's really good at getting teams up when their back's against the wall. I think it's actually going to be closer. And Arizona State's notoriously bad on the road.
Well, that's a good point.
Their first win was against Washington State last week on the road in a while. So I think it's going to be closer than people think. I think Arizona State still wins it, but I think it's by 4. It's going to be a dogfight.
It's inside a touchdown.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll come back next week. I said 2 touchdowns. You said within 4, and
Yep.
we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's talk. Give us predictions for BYU, Wisconsin.
I said this morning.
The HomeSports Keys to the Game, brought to you by HomeSports. Leave a legacy for your children.
Okay.
Was that good?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
We got that on. We got that
Boom.
on audio.
That
It's
just
recorded.
happened.
I think BYU is going to win 24-21. Go ahead and make your prediction.
I think they are going to be. They're gonna have a hard time scoring touchdowns. I think they're going to kick 4 field goals, and they're going to lose by 5, 24-19.
Wow.
Yeah.
BYU. I picked
Justin
BYU
Sorensen's gonna have a
24-21. You
sore
say
right
BYU
foot.
loses 24-19.
I think they lose in a close one, and I think that the problem is there's just going to be too many red zone squandered red zone opportunities.
I will say this, Cameron. If BYU cannot score 24 points, they lose.
That's the magic number, no question.
Game's over. So I picked 24. If they get there, they win. If you said they don't get there, then they for sure are going to lose.
They'll have opportunities to get there. They'll get big plays. They'll move between the 20s, but you've got to be able to run the ball. And against their front 7, we're going to stall out a lot on the 17-yard line, I'm afraid.
All right. Tell me about Utah State.
I really like what's happening with the Aggies right now. I want a redo for Boise. I want a Boise redo, and I want it now.
I like that.
Because I think they're a different team than they were.
They played
3-4
Boise
weeks
right at
ago.
the wrong time.
Yeah.
Right at the wrong time.
Boise won the lottery, the Mountain West lottery, dang it.
Yep.
Again. Why does it always happen? I don't know a more charmed team in college football than Boise, where they just happen to catch everybody just the right time. It's
well,
not right.
I think for Utah State, as you look at that, though, with everything that occurred and how they've rebounded, and especially the offense, the way that they've rebounded and started getting their young freshman quarterback to play the way he's playing is kudos to Matt Wells and their offensive staff. I think those guys have done a heck of a job turning that thing around.
The good news is I think they've got all winnable games.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they ran the table the rest of the season. And I would just love for them to have an opportunity to go to the Mountain West Championship, because I think they can compete with anybody. I think they beat Fresno State or whoever they might play.
Well, I said early on that Utah State was most certainly the front runner for the championship, and it was unfortunate to see Chucky go down, but I don't know how they're going to surpass.
Matt Wells is a really good coach. Can we all just pause and just do a little air applause for how he's a good coach? He's a good coach.
Do you know Matt? You guys.
Oh, well, I mean, we tweet to each other. Well, I mostly tweet to him-ish, and then sometimes he'll probably read them. That's our relationship.
he really is.
He'll vouch.
No, he's an awesome guy. He
Yeah.
really is. We're gonna have to get him on the show.
No.
We'll get him on the show one of these days. But he's a good person. Played quarterback at Utah State. I've known him now for quite a few years in coaching, and I've watched him kind of grow through the ranks. New Mexico and all of a sudden up to Utah State. Quarterback coach, coordinator, head football coach, and I'm really happy for him and hope that this season turns out, at least with all that's occurred, turns out the very best for those guys. And I have a great friend on the staff up there, Mark Weber's their offensive line coach.
Yes.
I love the guy, and I want nothing but success for that team up there.
Yep, they're the real deal.
Concluding segment, Cameron. You need to shave before you come to these.
No.
You look bad.
I look really good. You're just mad because you're splotchy. You got splotchy facial hair.
I know that's about 7 days of growth right there.
You know what, though?
That's okay.
I've noticed
You need to shave.
gravity's taking a toll.
Right
because it's not. No, I mean
everywhere
with your hair.
It's just
I
falling
find
out.
that it's growing on the bottom of your head.
Okay.
And being pulled from.
I think you look fine. I think
you look great. Yeah, you're really you're handsome.
We better conclude the show, Cameron.
All right. Let's talk about the greatest time of the year, which is, in my estimation, right now. We're in the heart of college football season. We've got the NBA that's just started. We've got high school playoffs that are coming up. Let's just take 2 minutes and talk about high school football. Obviously, everybody can't be Skyline, which is, bless their hearts. But there's still some pretty good teams out there.
Did you know? You know what's sad about you saying that? Gosh. It's the first time in 29 years that Skyline High School has not made it to the playoffs.
29. I did my part.
I had my own little personal.
You pitched in.
We had a little memorial in
you
my
helped
backyard when that happened. We found that out.
You helped. Other than the overthrow.
Quarterfinals. 5A quarterfinals.
Who do you like in high school right now?
Bingham High School is really, really good.
Oh, everyone says that.
Well, they are.
Why?
I think they have a great football coach. And good players are flocking to Bingham. I know we've got open enrollment right now in the state of Utah, but I think the best players, for the most part, are flocking to Bingham. Here's it's going to be interesting to watch, Cameron. Jordan High School has this quarterback. They're like 5-5 this year, but they've had some really weird losses. They've had some challenging losses. And I think they're the state champ from last year, and I think they're kind of a sleeper. They're not quite as good, but I think they're the sleeper in the playoffs, Jordan High School. They play PG this weekend, and I happen to be a Pleasant Grove guy, and I have a nephew on that team. We're going to go up and watch it, but I think they're going to have quite a unique challenge stopping this Kafensis kid up at Jordan. And it really is the best time of the year. November, Thanksgiving's coming, high school football playoffs.
Turkey Bowl? Are you playing in the Turkey Bowl this year?
Turkey Bowl, and where are we playing?
I am 4-0 in the last 4 years. It's 4 straight years in the Turkey Bowl.
You haven't invited us to play in that.
Well,
is there a reason
for
that?
The kids in the neighborhood.
That's what I thought. You and the 10-year-olds and your team's been winning.
Our favorite. Most of our offensive scheme is the just get open scheme.
Right.
It's pretty good.
Just get open.
Just get open. Like, we'll do it out of different sets though. We'll go 2-back, just get open. We'll do single back. We'll go pro set, just get open, trips.
What do you do on defense, or do you not play defense?
We guard an area. That minimizes the exercise.
You got that spot. Yeah. I got this spot.
I got anything in this zone. Broncos principles, pretty much, except without the effort.
Bend, don't break.
Yeah, bend, don't break. We'll let you go 20-20 all game long. Okay. But yeah, we buckle down inside the 20.
Well, great time of year.
This is perfect.
Thank you for being on the show. We appreciate all of the viewers and listeners out there, and we hope that each week we can bring some very, very valuable content to you, and Cameron and I can have a good time.
We started out really serious this week. We're loosened up next week a little bit, but I'm not afraid.
Call us out. Give us your last radio voice call.
You've been listening to the HomeSports Legacy Podcast, starring Brandon Doman and Cameron Stewart. And sorry, I almost went into like spoken word.
Do that.
This has been a presentation of HomeSports Legacy.
Right.
This has been a good time. Let's do it again next week. Same time, same bat channel.
Thank you.
Go team.